So we're really excited today to talk about vibrant supply chains in the global South, largely because that's where a lot of where Dune's time is being spent, and a lot of where Ellen's time is being spent at HP. So maybe when we're waiting for Ellen, Dune, I could just do like a quick slide share and talk a little bit about Seoul Buffalo and the Ocean Plastic Leadership Network. Does that sound good?
Yeah, sounds wonderful.
All right. All right, can you guys see my screen? Great. Well, I just want to very quickly touch on Seoul Buffalo and the Ocean Plastic Leadership Network. Seoul Buffalo is the parent company. The Ocean Plastic Leadership Network is 65 organizations strong, from activists to industry. And our mission is really to bring together so many of the different organizations that are dedicated to ocean plastics, really across the value chain. We have Dow Chemical and Greenpeace and Procter & Gamble and National Geographic, HP, Lonely Whale, Next Wave Plastics, who are all represented today here on the call, World Wildlife Fund. So we really found ourselves very much in the middle of this issue. And it has been a really incredible ride. We had 165 organizations that were with us in the middle of the Atlantic Gyre this last year with in one of the garbage patches. And it was a really incredible experience. I would say one of the most powerful experiences that we've ever experienced as a company. But we were able to really drive incredible change on that ship. One of the initiatives that was funded, that was totally born in the Middle Atlantic Ocean, was called the Plastic Picker Operational Working Group, which is 5 organizations of waste picking groups spanning the continent. And it's really about bringing these organizations together, not just to empower them, which is definitely needed, but also to give them access to global supply chains. And that really is going to dovetail into today. So with that, I'll turn it to Dune.
Well, it's really a pleasure to be on this panel, and excited to see so many folks I haven't seen in such a long time because we've all been stuck at home. So thank you all for joining us for this panel. Dave and I were joking that Dave, Ellen, and I are kind of the 3 musketeers these days talking about these supply chains, and really excited to hear the questions that come from today's conversation. So Lonely Whale, most of you probably know us for our work on the straw campaign that we launched in 2017. But also in 2017, what we did is we put forward a really important initiative that puts collaboration, transparency front and center in the ocean-bound plastic conversation. We launched Next Wave Plastics with Dell Technologies, hi Ellen, and 9 other companies, the United Nations Environment Program, Dr. Jenna Jambek, and a couple of others. And it was really with the intent of having global industries sitting at the table together, working together on building infrastructure in parts of the world where the plastic pollution crisis is the worst today, and then taking the material that they collect and integrating it into their products, thereby permanently removing it from the supply chain. In doing this, what we had an opportunity to do is to showcase that this so-called waste material, or material we hadn't found an end-of-life solution for yet, was really valuable. We can use it. It takes a little bit of extra effort to figure out how to use some of the materials sometimes, but we can make office chairs out of it. We can make trek, bicycle, mountain bike grips out of it. We can make carpet tiles out of it, and we can make ink cartridges out of it. So we were really fortunate to have HP join us alongside of IKEA in 2018. And I think what you'll hear today is a little bit more of the story of how NGOs and corporations and then global competitors are working together to really stop the flow of plastic and keep that plastic in our economy today. So very excited to share the story with you.
Thanks, Dune. And without further ado, Ms. Ellen Jackowski,
hello,
the Chief Sustainability Officer.
Yes, hi.
Hello.
Hey, Dave. Hi, Dune. So excited to be here today to talk about plastic and what we're doing with all of our products to try to really reinvent our entire supply chain. So thinking about how we move away from using plastic, virgin material, to using recycled content wherever possible. And this is part of the HP's overall plastic strategy as we move towards a circular economy. And you can find out more about that at hp.com/sustainable impact if you want to drill into the specific parts of our holistic plastic strategy. But today we're focused mostly on this piece around ocean-bound plastic and what we're doing there. And what we've aimed to do is to set up a stable, scalable supply chain where we can reinvent how we are sourcing our materials for our products. It started with one of our first products, the HP ink cartridge, where we were already using recycled bottle plastic to make that ink cartridge. And we challenged ourselves to think about our procurement strategy there. Can we buy from a different location that has increased environmental and social impact? And we narrowed in on a location in Haiti where we found some partners, both a recycler there locally, as well as a team of NGO and other experts who could help us stand up this supply chain in a responsible manner, not just thinking about the environmental aspect, but the social impact aspect on the local community there. How do we provide a livable wage, secure jobs, and a career path to kind of greater promise? How do we help enable capabilities for Haiti to compete on the global plastics market? So that's what we've been doing down there since September 2016, is setting up this supply chain. We started with this transition of using what we were at the time over 1 million bottles a day to make HP ink cartridges, to start sourcing those a part of that 1 million bottle a day process out of Haiti to stop those plastic bottles from flowing in the ocean and instead flow into HP products. So it began with the ink cartridge, then we expanded once we figured out how to do it into our personal system side of our business, our notebooks, our desktop computers, our display monitors. And now we have a whole portfolio of products that use ocean-bound plastic. We then took it to the next level and decided to certify it, create a standard in partnership with UL, so that we could take the learnings that we had from this supply chain and then help kind of broadcast that out to anyone else who was interested in taking advantage of some of the research and the experience that we had, some of the things that we learned to do, and obviously things that we learned not to do as we've been setting up this process. And we continue to intend to scale. Now that we've continued to move this plastic throughout our portfolio, to date, we've used over 60 million bottles of ocean-bound plastic, stopping them from flowing into the ocean, and again, into HP products.
That's amazing.
Hey, Dave, can I just put a point on something Ellen said?
Sure.
And I think, Ellen, I got to work this into your talking points. These are bottles that nobody else can do anything with. They're brown bottles, they're red bottles. And so these are not typically the bottles that you think of, but these are bottles that specifically have been sourced, and they have found a way to integrate it. And I think that material innovation and that design innovation is just so critical. And it's something that I think we can all really learn from and scale up in our own practices.
Thanks, Dune. And Alan, what came to mind when you start to talk about the social impact specifically, what's going on with COVID-19 with respect to the ocean plastic crisis, I think it's just really important to note right now. We've got 126 billion masks a month that are going into the system. If that trend keeps on going for the next year, it will cover the entire landmass of Switzerland, just masks, not including the 65 billion gloves and the face shields and everything else that's coming into the system. There's 30% more waste that's coming into the system. And we're seeing waste picking communities around the world really struggling right now, all over the world. So I know that you guys have been working through some pretty interesting things with respect to some of the implementations in Haiti during this time period. I was wondering if you can speak to that. And then Dune, we'd love to hear any success stories or the good and bad that you're seeing with a lot of the member organizations in NextWave.
Yeah, so I think the challenges that we're all facing during COVID. I live in California, and when the pandemic, began, when it hit, we certainly kind of rolled back our behaviors of, instead of bringing your reusable bag to the grocery store, you can't do that anymore. You have to now, they allowed a temporary halt to that legislation, and they were allowing, single-use plastic again. Since then, the science has come out, more studies have been done in California back into using reusable bags. And I think it's really important to to continue our commitments. We do not want to roll anything back here, right? HP just launched a new goal to eliminate 75% of our single-use plastic in our packaging by 2025. Again, that's part of this holistic plastic strategy, not just thinking critically about how to move away from virgin to recycled, but where can we eliminate it where appropriate. Some of the challenges that we've been facing during COVID, for example, in Haiti, one was first protect the workers. What are the hand washing systems that are available? Have a lot of local running water in most of the locations where our collectors live. So we moved fast with our NGO partners to set up hand washing stations, to identify places where people could safely isolate and self-quarantine if they were starting to feel symptoms. And really need to give a huge shout out to our partners down there who made that possible and helped us drive some of these changes and capabilities within the supply chain. But as well, as I mentioned, we're trying to scale our operation there. We're in the middle of building a washing line, which is going to enable over 1,000 additional income opportunities to the 1,100 that we already have, and also allow us to use a lot more plastic, like find more, recycle more. And as we've been building that washing line, we were supposed to send an install team down to install it. The 10 containers of the parts from Germany had arrived, but the install team was halted due to lack of international travel due to COVID. So instead now, what we've done is set up a virtual system and a physical system. We hired a team of local builders down there. They've never built a wash line before, but our install team based in Germany, Montreal, and the United States now zooms in every morning and spends time with them. They are the eyes to the hands on the ground building this washing line. So it's really enabled us during this time to think much more creatively about how we continue to make progress. So we should not let this pandemic stop us. We need to figure out creative ways to continue to innovate and do the things that we all know we need to do for our businesses, for our customers, and of course for the planet.
Thanks, Ellen. Dune, love to hear your perspective on some of the things that are happening with some of the Next Wave members and also some of the waste picker communities that you guys are working with.
One of the things that I think is so incredible about these Next Wave member companies is that when COVID hit and all of us put everything on travel restriction and spending limits and, everybody kind of shrunk a little bit to really figure out what was going to happen, I feel like the Next Wave member companies really doubled and tripled down. Their commitment to continuing to support these communities where they have invested so much, like HP and others, in Haiti, Indonesia, Philippines, and I might, Dave, is it okay if I just share a quick slide?
Yeah, sure.
Just to showcase where we have our supply from, but to really showcase, to really make sure that these communities that are providing, let me see if I can actually get the right thing to showcase. Can you see, what can you see? Can you see, you can see me again.
We can see.
How about that? Can you see the slide?
Yep, perfect.
Okay, perfect. Okay, great. But all member companies are working within communities where there are natural disasters, there is political unrest, there are community strifes, issues that happen, including global pandemics. So this is a good illustration of where we're working. We are sourcing with 18 suppliers from 9 countries. And the intent with Next Wave Plastics is to create a global network of ocean-bound plastic suppliers. One, so that we can make sure that we're addressing the needs of the communities all around the world that are facing this crisis right now. But 2, so that if there's an issue that happens in one part of the world, we can create redundancy and stability in the supply chain so that a company like HP can really count on these supply chains to really deliver. Now, with these communities, not only are they being affected personally by COVID, as the price of oil changes, so does the value of that material as well that they're collecting. A lot of these workers are seeing some pretty significant financial constraints associated with COVID. Many of our member companies have donated directly to several organizations that are crowdsourcing funds to provide for those who are on the front lines and don't have any other means of income. So I'm really proud of the companies. Of course, there's a lot more that we can do. And one thing that we're doing as a membership coalition is we're working really hard on establishing sustainability standards to ensure that the lives of the workers, their families, and their communities are considered at the very top of all of the infrastructure development that we're doing within the Next Wave member company community. There's a lot more work to be done, and you'll be seeing coming out from Next Wave in the next few months what our framework is for social sustainability as well as environmental sustainability.
Thanks, Dune. I think one of the things that we discuss when the three of us get together, but that we're getting a lot of questions about as well, is how do we bring more buyers into this system, right? We want to build a vibrant supply chain. We're talking about developing countries, mismanaged waste. The kind of loose definition for mismanaged waste is, correct me if I'm wrong, because there's a few different definitions out there, but 50 miles from a waterway that's not managed, that goes into open dumps. And that's where a lot of this plastic is being sourced in the global south or developing world. And there's just not enough buyers, and HP is one, right? And it was a long journey to set up your supply chain down there. Ellen, we got a question about from the audience about, what's the journey of the waste collected from Haiti? Where to go to be processed, and how's it remade into new products? And I guess kind of dovetailing on that, like how can we get more HPs? How can we get more success stories and make it easier for big global brands to source this secondary material?
Yeah, so I also saw a question about what happens to the ink cartridge when it's done. So for over 15 years, we've offered closed loop recycling on that ink cartridge. So if you're an HP printer owner and you use HP ink, we want that back. If you go to hp.com/recycle, there are all sorts of ways to either drop it off or mail it back in for free to us. We disassemble it, and then we use that shredded cartridge plastic. We mix it with this bottle plastic to make the new ink cartridge out of recycled plastic. So the question of, where does the plastic in Haiti go? How does it make its way into our supply chain? So today we buy the shredded material out of Haiti. It's very dirty, right? Because it's typically sitting outside. It's being picked up from the side of a road or out of a canal. We then take that shredded plastic, we ship it to South Carolina where we wash it, get all that dirt, all those contaminants off. Then we move it up to Montreal to compound it with our recycled ink cartridge plastic, and then make the new ink cartridge there. This development that I talked about, where we're building this washing line, we want to bring that additional capability into Haiti. So one, we save on the logistics cost, the transportation emissions of shipping it to South Carolina, for that extra washing step. So that's part of enabling that additional capability. And as well, training the local workers there about, how to be able to compete on this global plastics market. To the buyer question, yes, we want more buyers in Haiti buying this plastic. That washing line is going to enable that. So, this is a conversation
Ellen is frozen
we continue
in
to have
time.
with all of the next wave.
There you are. You're back. Yeah, you just froze.
Am I back?
You're back.
Okay. Was I still talking about?
We want more buyers in Haiti.
We want more buyers in Haiti. Yes, and that's, again, this washing line is going to enable higher quality plastic so that other companies can purchase that level out of Haiti. So more to come there. But, we are open for business. Our supply chain is there. Our partners are there. You wouldn't be buying from HP. You'd be buying from the local Haiti recycler. But that's the idea.
Yeah, and on the buyer question too, Dave, I think that there's a lot to be learned about sourcing ocean-bound plastics. Everybody does have a slightly different idea of what ocean-bound plastic is. At Next Wave Plastic, we're very specific in what that is, and we're really making sure that all of the suppliers are vetted so that when a company purchases material through this network, they have the same confidence in that material as material that they would purchase from another country.
Dune, can you give your
consistency?
I was going to say, can you give your definition real quick of how you guys view ocean bound? I think that could be helpful.
So it's within 30 kilometers of any waterway, and specifically it's mismanaged waste. So we really look for additionality. The material that companies like HP build infrastructure and supply chains to be collected is material that would have been left on the ground had it not been for the intervention of these companies. So while open pits are part of that equation in some areas, managed landfills, albeit somewhat informal landfills, are not, because there's active management of that particular property. Most of the companies are sourcing from within just a couple of miles from the shoreline. So even though 30 kilometers, 50 kilometers, that's a big swath of land from a beach. And I think that's a point of criticism that we get a lot is, boy, that's pretty far away from the ocean or pretty far away from a river. The reality is everyone is focused much more inshore, closer to the shore, but they're also really focused on making sure that they have ample supply into the supply chain, So there is stability in that particular supply chain. And you need more material, and sometimes you have to go a little bit further inland to get that material.
We got a question.
So we need to provide consistency. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was saying we got a question from the audience of how does a smaller company source viable secondary material? I think that could be. I know there's a lot of different options, but maybe if there's a few recommendations you could make, Dune.
Yeah, so we work with companies of all shapes and sizes. So our smallest companies to our largest, they're really sharing with each other sources of material. They're sharing with each other experiences with that material. We've even had engineers from different companies work together on utilizing material that came into the facility with certain properties that created a situation where it wasn't viable for the team that was working on it. And so they called up another company, a larger company, and talked with the engineers to really figure out how they worked with that material. So one of it is sourcing it. So there's a lot of sharing between the companies themselves. There is no one online place to go to say, Google, I want to find all sources of ocean-bound plastic. So right now, this transfer of information between companies that have experience with it is really the best way to be able to access the information you need to be able to source the material.
Thanks. So we had a question that came through a couple of times about, how can you share any thoughts about plastic bottle waste creation in the first place, further upstream? Now, that's a much broader question, but, I think it's important that we address that there are lots of different solutions, and totally let you guys there are lots of different solutions to end this systemic problem, right? And we're talking about a major system. We're talking about a material that right now there's not a better material that scales at the same cost as plastic. And, when you look at, there's a lot of environmental organizations that want to shut plastic off at the top. And there's a lot of, all of the big plastic companies and consumer packaged goods companies and any company that uses plastic today is trying to figure out how to keep it in a circular system. So I'll just address that. I mean, this is a macro, one of the most complicated issues on the face of the planet. But, I think we're all trying to figure out how to answer that exact question. And that's what we're doing, as a system. And the one thing that is challenging is that we just got set back by COVID-19. There's no doubt about that. Like, waste management has gotten significantly more challenging. So I'll let you guys dive in there too, if you like.
I mean, I can start, Ellen, and just say that it's really complex. Yep. There is a pricing differential that we have to figure out between virgin and recycled plastic. There are infrastructure issues with recycling all across the United States and elsewhere, where we really need to shore up our facilities and that infrastructure. And around material integration is really needed. But I have to be honest, Dave, I think that we need to go really far upstream, and we need to take a look at the price differential between virgin plastic and recycled plastic. As soon as we start to see that shift, right, then I think we'll see a lot more integration, collection of plastic, and then a lot more integration of recycled materials. The commitments are there, and the commitments are amazing from the companies. We just really need to help shore up the infrastructure.
Thanks.
And I think a lot of this also starts at the consumer level, right? And one of the things that we're trying to do is always, be in touch with our customer insights and continue, to understand how we can encourage customers to demand more of us, to demand more recycled content, in our products, or to demand things like the goal that we just announced to eliminate 75% of single-use plastic in our packaging. And obviously HP does not make, plastic bottles, and we're doing our best to think about creative ways like using what would be the refuse of another company's product to make our products, so enabling that circular economy. But the more we can collectively, as companies, demand from our suppliers more recycled content, as individual consumers demanding recycled content and circular economy thinking from all of the companies that we're purchasing from, we will be able to create this shift. We will be able to overcome this price differential. But it is going to take disruptive thinking. The fact that we are buying a $2 million washing line, that HP is buying a $2 million washing line for one of our first tier suppliers in Haiti, that something like that has never happened before inside of our company. But it's part of this wake up call of we cannot continue to do business how we've done business in the past. Like we have to stop. We could all during COVID, think, well, it's just this moment in time and we can roll all of these things back and start using plastic again, like confetti. But we are all going to suffer from that. We can't let that happen. So I think individual determination and keeping a really open and honest and authentic conversation with your customers about the reality of where they play a role in this process, as well as where we play a role and have a responsibility to work differently.
Thanks, Ellen. Yeah, I think consumer education is key as well. I mean, you look at, there's 15 million people that would be categorized as waste pickers around the world that are like the last line of defense from keeping plastic waste from getting into the ocean. And a lot of times they're the most marginalized communities. They have a tough life in a lot of places. And it's really important to make the rest of the world just aware that this is actually happening and that we're so dependent on these folks that are absolutely are getting tested in a way they've never been tested before because of COVID, especially in India, where the lockdowns have been like, these people are dependent on daily bringing a big bag of plastic and getting paid for it. And they weren't allowed out of their house, for weeks and months in some cases. So, I mean, getting the consumer engagement and the consumer understanding around just how big, how global this issue is mission critical.
And Dave, if I could put in a shameless plug, if you go to Lonely Well's Instagram today, you're going to see one of our podcasts that features Thread International and First Mile, which is an organization that HP works very closely with in Haiti and elsewhere. And they work with those first mile communities. And so Kelsey is going to be speaking on the podcast about the needs and interests of those communities and how we all can really help to ensure that we have equitable communities in this ocean plastic crisis. So I would encourage anybody to check it out if you don't know the story of waste pickers firsthand. It's a really good place to go for a first start.
Thanks, Dune. So it is 3:27. So I think we're going to end on time. I'm going to put a shameless plug in for my roundtable that I'm hosting in 3 minutes about COVID-19 and the ocean plastics crisis. So that is going to be on another BAT channel if you look. But from my perspective, I'll let Dune and Ellen sort of close out. I just want to say, just how important it is right now for all of us to be engaged, specifically, across the industry and environmental verticals. There are all kinds of different solutions. Some are absolutely directly in competition with each other, and that is absolutely okay. Like tension equals progress. There's a lot of incredible stuff that's happening, and most of it has happened in the last 3 or 4 years. There's been this the turtle got the straw up his nose, and 30 million people saw that and were outraged, and the biggest retailers in the world were getting phone calls from their customers. And that made a huge difference up and down the supply chain. I mean, we have these 3 epic boat trips between Ellen MacArthur, Marcus Erickson from Five Gyres that sailed to Hawaii from California, David de Rothschild that did a similar mission in 2011, put all this stuff on the map. And it's the awareness has been just coming and coming and coming. And when COVID hit, it really was just, you couldn't get a ocean plastics story through the clutter with everything that's going on. And for good reason, not just the pandemic, but the social justice movement that's, once in a lifetime. And everything that's happening with this election, where it's just, it's really important that we all double down on ocean plastics. And I'll let you guys close. Thank you.
Ellen, I'll let you have the last word. I'll just offer that this global of everything that we're dealing with in the world today, I truly believe that ocean plastic is the thing that we can solve for, and we can showcase a path forward for a lot of other issues. But don't be a buyer of this material. Really get involved, really want to be involved, and learn, collaborate, join one of these groups and just become part of the solution. And together we can really solve this.
Yep, and that just hits on my point. Together we can solve this. There is no way HP would have gotten this far on our own. We couldn't do it, right? We needed Thread and First Mile. We needed work. We need Next Wave Plastics. We need, a series of experts in this space to help advise us on how to do this in the right way, not just, again, environmentally, but from a social impact point of view, paying clear attention to the community that we are working with in these new ways that have never been done before. So Let's all work together to bring, disruptive thinking. We don't have a choice, right? Something that happened this weekend in Haiti as we're building this wash line, Tropical Storm Laura just ripped through and washed out one of our bridges to the plant. Luckily, there are other ways there, but another symbol of climate change is happening. What we as humans are doing to our planet is more real than ever before. And in this moment with the pandemic, we can't lose sight of that. So together we can make a difference. We can figure this out. And I know we will. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you guys so much. It's 3:30 on the dot.
You.
I'll see anybody that wants to join me over in this next panel. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.